presentation matters in every phase. It translates into many other things, like not only designing them.
And I think that comes down to the fact that as like in a digital space, a lot of brands are now starting to get online in our country, right? So we don't have that digital visual literacy. Either you win or you learn. It's that simple.
Right.
And for us, this is now, okay, now we realize that, okay, we need to put more time in.
We used to show them example, even if it's not refined, but we are showing them how the final product will look, how the presentation will look.
I don't generally purchase Apple products, but I still look at the website.
Yeah.
Whenever they launch a product, the first thing I do is I don't look at the presentation.
Right.
I'll go straight to the website and be like, what did you do this time? You know?
Some or the other day you might buy it. Never know.
Affiliate link. Hi everyone, welcome back to the It's Rendering podcast, and well, got Varun again with me. And we were actually having a conversation the other day, and it just being candid. We did end up losing a client recently, and so we were trying to figure out, how we go about things. And I think I was under the assumption that the way that we presented it was way better than, or our work, or the way that we presented our pitches, our proposals, or even the first iteration of things, or ideas as well. I was always under the impression that we did a better job than most out there.
Yeah.
And that is our hubris also. And then finally we saw how someone else did it. But our client was, potential client who we've lost, they were kind enough to actually give us feedback and then tell us that, the way that they presented it, although the ideas might not have been as robust probably as ours.
Right.
That's from our perspective, biased perspective. But still, it helped us see, and so that we were talking about why presentation matters.
Yeah.
And maybe we can talk a little bit about that as well.
Exactly. So I think, so earlier, like when we started that project, so I was like, we are doing a great job. And we had like multiple iterations. And the one thing we did is we directly sent him the raw thing. And I think that's the worst we could have done. And I think that time we didn't know like if this would work or not. We were in the assumption like we are showing the progress. But later we realized it's not just about the progress. We have to present them in a better way, even if it's initial iterations.
For us, it was very much like, we are still in the ideation phase.
Right.
Like, we're still trying to figure out like, okay, what direction we want to take.
Exactly.
But then even that, the way that it was presented, in hindsight, maybe was not as polished for them or not as refined. Although from our perspective, it's like, we're being transparent.
Yeah, because that doesn't give a broader perspective of how the brand will look, even in terms of like small elements, for example, colors, or even if there's a mock-up. They can't imagine in that way. We have to present them in that way. So it was very raw, and I think they can't process the thing which we usually think about it, right?
Yeah, I think that's very important, right? In our podcast, we're trying to talk about how we craft thoughtful experiences.
Exactly.
But then thoughtful experiences also implies that there is some thought that goes behind it. Now, how do I translate that into the experience that the end user, in our case, it was the client,
right,
that they experience?
Right.
We are crafting something with a thought, but then it doesn't translate as an experience to them. It's
we can internally we can discuss that this is the idea, but how should we describe it to the client? We can't directly verbally tell them. It should be visual enough to even if you're not explaining them the whole process, they should be easily understand what the design is, what the idea is behind the brand identity.
And it comes down to being specific and clear about things, right? It's always an assumption, like as designers or as people who like even who work on podcasts or videos, whatever it is, we always think that, what we are saying is so easy for everyone to understand. But then we have to understand that we need to put ourselves in their shoes. Sometimes we're like, okay, if I'm trying to figure out an idea right now. I have an idea in my head as a client, and I've trusted us in this case, to craft an identity for me. And then you come back with 10 different options. And then you tell me, okay, these are our top 5. But then for me, as a client, it's like, okay, these are top 5. But then how does this translate into what I'm supposed to want?
Yeah.
Like at the end, I need it on, I don't know, a billboard somewhere. I need it on some packaging somewhere. I need it on some software somewhere. I cannot visualize that. Right. So when someone just dumps it in that on me, I'm like, okay, this is nice, but what do I do with this? Right.
I think this problem is because like when I started my freelancing journey, so I never knew that this is a process. Like if you're designing a logo, it should be presentable enough to show the client. No one ever told us that this is the way, this is the process, that if you're designing a logo, it should be presentable. So what I used to think, like we are crafting a logo and just we have to show the raw process. But because Indian clients are not very that I'm not I'm not offending any Indian clients.
Simba was like, careful, bro.
Not offending any Indian clients, but they don't think beyond what like the overseas client thing. Like they are very precise about things. Like they need to know why you did this, why you are crafting this idea, because that's very important. Because ultimately, it's their brand.
Yes, and I think that comes down to the fact that as like in a digital space, a lot of brands are now starting to get online in our country, right? So we don't have that digital visual literacy a lot of times, and so whereas in maybe like I don't know, someone who is 30 in their 30s in the US who's starting their own brand, they understand or see things very differently than maybe someone here who's doing the same thing.
Correct.
And so this process that you were talking about, right? And I mean, you've been working as a freelancer. Sometimes we get so overwhelmed by like someone in some other market is presenting it like in a 10-page deck. I'm like, why do I need to do that 10-page deck? But then presentation matters.
Yes,
right.
I think back in days like when digital was not very boom, so people used to print things out and they used to make that product. Like if it's a packaging, they used to print it and see if how that looks. Same way. Now the process is very easier. We can directly show them in a mock-up. It's very visually appealing also, and without doing very much hassle, like going on printing out of stuff.
Yeah, I don't need to go and take a picture of a billboard.
Yeah, correctly. So it's now the process is easier to, but it depends on the designer if how he's presenting it. If he's just copy pasting from Google and just aligning stuff here and there, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't work.
Yeah, we've seen people do that. But
yeah, like you have to. If you're designing a logo for like 2 hours, you have to sit and present it. Like you have to give more time to present it.
Yeah. And it might seem tedious, right? Sometimes because it's like, okay, I spent so much time on the logo. Why should I spend another 2 hours figuring out how to present this?
Yeah, correct.
But it comes down to what you said. Like I have thoughts, I know what this is, but does the other person know? Right. And until I'm able to do that for them, and that comes down to this whole process of it's an experience for the end user. It's not just, I have to design a brand identity. It doesn't stop at the logo.
Right.
Anyway, at the end of the day, when you're creating a brand kit, you do show them what applications are like.
Correct.
Why don't you start with that? Because at the end of the day, that's all they care about. Like, I'm not saying that brands don't care about the actual process. They do. But they want to know how it translates to the real world because they want to earn revenue. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters because if they don't have revenue, what happens to the brand? So the audience, how is the audience going to experience it, right?
Right.
It's not just an isolated logo. It's going to be used in so many places. And I think you brought this point up just now about print. Even though today we are digital first, but I don't think there's any brand that doesn't have something physical, right?
Exactly.
Even if you're a service based like we are, I mean, for us also, we have merch that we create.
Right.
That's very physical. Like we never thought, like 1.5 years back when we actually started working, we didn't think that we would have merch and all of those things. But yeah, you have to at the end of the day, and it helps, right? So it's all a part of that presentation and part of that experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and one more thing I just remember on base of like presentation matters. Like recently you send on group some resumes, so you were like visual matters, like presentation matters, first impression matters, like how you're presenting yourself to somebody. That doesn't mean like in interview process, but in like if you're sending us some resumes, you have to be very careful of what you're writing, what you're showing. It doesn't have to be like rightly I have so many skills. Just resume.
No, but that comes down to what you said about copy paste from Google, right? A lot of designers today, they'll see some resume that someone's created somewhere and they don't realize that, hang on, this is their skill set, I need to change it, or this is just comes as skill 1 2 3 4. That's exactly right. And then like, what skills? Like tell me, like I can see skill 1 is like on a scale of 0 to 10 you marked yourself 9. What skill is this? Like I don't know.
Exactly.
Or it's like literal, the one that I shared on the group was, I think it was a literal copy paste like of a screenshot of an image from Google. Like what? How is this you? And then that, I think, in the sense that you look at it and be like, oh, this is so cool. But then when me as someone who wants to work with you looks at that, I'm like, no, this person hasn't put in enough effort or hasn't put in enough thought into what they're doing. So then why should I work with you?
Right.
And I think that comes down to the client part of it also, right? That's when they see someone who has put in like 2 hours to present something versus us who's just, I mean, not that we didn't put in effort. I'm like saying we did put in effort. We recorded a video. We recorded, a proper process on how we should walk them through it. But then when you see the way that the other people have presented or the other agency who has presented it, suddenly you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this I see why that's the case, right? Yeah. So it's putting yourself in their shoes.
Correct.
And understanding how they would like for it to be presented also. And I think in the first, was it the first episode? One of the takeaways was you should understand how other people like to communicate.
Yeah, correct.
And for us, when we are trying to craft all of these things for other people. It's understanding what the client prefers also. Like, okay, sure, there's a digital first client. They understand that. But then there's a client who understands the physical space more. So then I need to present stuff differently for them. Like I'm just saying, suppose there's a client who runs an e-commerce store and I don't even show them how it might look on a website.
Correct.
Does that make any sense? Versus a client who maybe they have a physical product and I don't show them how it looks like on a physical product.
Yeah.
How is that relevant to them? It's just an isolated logo at the end of the day.
Yeah, right? And I think this also translates into like if there are two types of clients, like one is a very digital kind of person, like he likes to see things very digitally, but he doesn't like to see the print or maybe like a physical copy. So you have to adapt according to the client as well. Like if a person likes to see the physical copy or print copy, so you have to make sure that he's happy with what the end product is. So that also translates like what you said earlier, right? Like if a person with e-commerce client, so if you're not showing him what it will look like, so he won't understand it. If you just explain him what the terms are, and he won't understand it like that.
Or even something as simple as brand kit, for example, we give them sizes of logos, different variations of logos. I'll be like, oh, this logo will look good in the header, or this logo will look good there. But show them.
Yeah,
I can tell them a lot of different things. Like this morning, I'm just being frank. I was woken up at like 7 a.m. with a call from a client. I was a little annoyed, but then for them it's like, oh, there's this email I've got, I don't understand this. And so it was an email from a very big company in India for them, like to understand that, oh, we want to collaborate with you. But then they hadn't really given the specifics of what's this going to look like. Do I need to put your logo on our brand? Do I need to, how much leeway do I get over there? So, and then it causes confusion. And when it causes confusion, you're causing friction. Correct, and when you're causing friction, conversion is zero. Right?
I think even like our first client, so when we were working with them, so we used to like verbally tell them like this is how the video will look. Like the intro will come here, the main episode will come here. But they were like, show us.
Yeah.
Just the example.
Yeah.
So we never knew that we could do that, but later we started incorporating in our other clients as well. Like we used to show them example, even if it's not refined, but we are showing them how the final product will look, how the presentation will look, because that will help them understand how their audience will look at the end product. Yeah.
And just to reiterate, this is not that this is not just before we went live or something. This is ideation phase. But in the ideation phase itself, people need to visualize ideas.
Yeah.
Right. Like today we were having a discussion on intellectual property and how that works.
Correct.
Like just an idea means nothing.
Yeah.
Unless it's visualized or unless it's manifested in some way. What does it matter? Right. So it's so important for us also when we have an idea for a logo, when we have an idea for even a visual identity, even if it's colors. I can very easily tell them these are your colors.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? Where am I supposed to use this? Am I supposed to use it on the floor? Am I supposed to use it there? And I think you created this brand. We were working on this brand identity recently where they came back to us and said, oh, we really like the application section. We hadn't thought that I'm sure they would have got it by now. So the aprons that we were using, they didn't think, we didn't realize that we could do this. It was not something that they asked us to do, but we just did it. Yeah. And then now suddenly they're like, oh, we love this. Can we have a further discussion on this?
Correct.
Right. So it takes that forward. It's not just conversions. It's also, you want people to come back. You want people to remember. And for the right reasons also. We started off by saying we lost a client. They're going to remember us for the wrong reasons. But you win some, you lose some, and today I was just reading this quote. Someone put up a status and someone who has his own brand, who's building his own brand. And he said, either you win or you learn. It's that simple.
Right.
And for us, this is now we realize that, we need to put more time in. And sometimes when you go to a client, you tell them like, I'm going to take, 10 days to come back to you with some ideation. Like you don't actually need 10 days to come back to the ideas, right. But you need 10 days to refine that idea. You need 10 days to figure out how to present it also.
Because I think ideation phase is a long phase. The execution phase is very small. Like even if it's like 1 or 2 days, it's fine. But ideation phase takes a time because you don't know what the product will look like. You have to research, you have to think like how the presentation will look, how the whole identity will look. I think this doesn't mean that this presentation thing only matters in designing thing, but I think it depends on like it translates into many other things, like not only designing but a lot of things. Presentation matters in every phase, in every product.
Absolutely. And it also comes down to like what we are talking about. It's also first impressions. Like when you start working with someone, it's not that you shouldn't carry it forward, but growing up, we always do the first impression is the last impression thing. That's so true in many ways, because the first step that someone's taking with you is a step where they don't trust you fully. They're now learning to trust you. how do you ensure that they continue trusting you? How do you ensure that they build that trust, right? Or you build that trust for them,
Right.
And that comes on. I mean, we were talking about you brought up Apple, I think, right? About the way that when they launch a product.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, here's the product, these are the features, go to do with it what you want, right? I mean, you have an iPhone, you'll know this better than anyone else,
but yeah, they present their website like their website is not just to buy a product, but it's a presentation and a user experience, like a very good experience when a user go, even if he's not buying a thing, he'll enjoy the whole process, he'll enjoy the whole flow.
I mean, I don't generally purchase Apple products, but I still look at the website. Whenever they launch a product, the first thing I do, I don't look at the presentation. I'll go straight to the website and be like, what did you do this time? That's the first thing.
I think even in their launch videos, they do very creative things. Absolutely, they take time, they edit it very precisely, and it's a good product. Like the end product is very nice. I think a lot of other companies copy them.
Yeah, that itself becomes a talking point.
Yeah,
it's like, we need the Apple style. Like, what's that style? Okay, seamless transitions, all of these things. But that's what you remember. I might not remember like, okay, at this minute this happened, but I remember at this minute I saw this.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part that pulls me in. I might not be an app like a consumer. I might not end up becoming that, but they've ensured that they get some brain space in my mind or mind space, so that it doesn't lose out, right?
Right. Some or the other day you might buy it. Never know.
Affiliate link right No, but it comes down to that. Like someone else has the standard, we follow, and then it's not just following; it's also upping the game, right? We have to get. So now we've seen what someone else does. So now we'll have our own twist to it. It's not just copy, like I said. It doesn't just copy paste.
Yeah.
Presentation matters, but it has to be you. And I think that's part of what we've been. Was it recently I shared an article that Spotify put out about the trends and what's important.
Correct.
And they had this Spotify's roundtable, podcasters roundtable thing, and one of the key things that came out was authenticity, right? Like you have to be authentic. You cannot try and be like if you're just trying to be like everybody else, no one's going to end up being like you're going to be no one at the end of the day.
Right.
You have to end up take something from someone else, figure out how that works for you, and then put your twist to it.
Right. I think even for the design or designers or any other creative person, they have to keep up with the trends. What's trending? Because that also translates into the topic we are talking about. Presentation matters. Because, for example, 2023 has a different trend, and I'm not following 2024 trend. I'm still in the old thing. So you will not grow. You will not be with the trending topics, or you'll not know what the new topics are there. So you have to keep up with everything. Like even the tools and resources you have to know. I think that's also comes down to like you have to, now that the AI is trending, like AI is on top, you have to use that. Now we have to stop the topic like AI will steal your job.
Yeah, next podcast, next tune in from that.
Yeah, I think you have to keep up with the trends. That also helps you, be very productive and creative in what you're presenting to the clients or anyone.
The reason I was smiling in between was I remembered Jeet. I don't think you must remember this. We were talking about a website that we were designing for someone, and he said their current website was in the 90s. We had to take them to the 2000s, but actually they wanted something 2000. You know, so it's that it comes down to those trends. Like you can see a website and you can very easily tell, like, okay, what trend is this following, right? And it's our job also at the end of the day, through the way that we present and through the ideas that we present, is to elevate that for someone else. Right? Don't keep them stuck wherever they are. Like we were talking about bento boxes, and then I saw a post or was it a video? I'm not sure exactly whether it was a post or a video, which is 2024 the year of bento boxes.
Yeah, I think it's there.
Yeah. For those who don't know, bento boxes, if you don't know them, DM us, we'll let you know what they are. So
we need to make a post about
this.
It's
not food.
Social media post.
Yeah. So it comes on like, I mean, our own website, which is in the works at the moment, I think should be done. Hopefully by the time you watch this, should have a section like that.
Yeah.
We won't go too much into detail there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it comes down to that. Like also I've seen something that works. But it's not just following trends for the sake of following, right?
Right.
Because trends might be good, they might also be bad.
Yeah, because trends are like, for example, if it's a minimal design, you just don't follow the exactly same thing in your brand, because you have to think from your brand perspective as well. Like if it's working for your brand, you have to modify a few sections so that it matches the style, but you don't have to just copy what's going on.
Yeah. And it comes down to being user-centric, right? I understand my audience, I understand my users,
right,
and I need to tailor it to them. Because very often, like even when we present, we get so caught up in like, okay, this is our way of present. This is the way that we want to be presented.
Yeah.
Or we want to present ourselves. but that's not the most important part. I need to understand how do people perceive me, or how what works for people's perception also.
Right.
If there is already a certain perception, there is, or if there's no perception, great, I can carve it out. But then I also need to understand and keep track of that perception also, right?
Right.
And figure out, like you said, figure out what works, what doesn't, and then take that forward, refine it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't work, because you can't be the same as you've always been.
Yeah, right. Like even for our social media designs, we are like experimenting on like different things so that it's presentable to the audience. Like they should be engaging enough to look at the slides. It's not just like you are following a trend, but you are making them presentable and interesting to the audience so that they can go through the slides and they can watch it, because that's what matters. Like at the end of the day, if you're making it very simple, it's not very engaging, people might just scroll up.
Yeah. So like I think it was Riverside that had this roundtable recently of creators and all that meet. And one of the most important things that everyone said was you should not be tracking the number of downloads, just the number of downloads. You need to track the retention in each episode, because I could have 1,000 people listening to an episode, but only listening to it for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Versus I could have 10 people listening to it for the entire duration. I would rather have 10 people for the entire duration than 1,000 people for 10 seconds.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it also comes down to, okay, I will talk, who's talking about me and how are they talking about me, right? I'm presenting myself a certain way, but then you are presenting me to someone else in a certain way.
Correct.
It comes down to that also. Right?
Yeah.
And then you have to draw your guidelines and your own conclusions there also to figure out, okay, I know how you're presenting it. Am I happy with that? Do I reinforce it? Or do I move forward in a different direction?
Yeah, right.
For us, it's moving forward in a different direction also slightly.
Yeah.
But okay, so what do you think about this? Because I know for us, when we present an idea, right, and now we're going to try and we are reworking how we do that also. That's fine. But where do you draw the line? For example, if I have to present, let's say now we've just been talking to a client who wants to do starting a physical store, and they want help with brand identity creation. So for them now, I know we spoke about Indian clients. This is an Indian client also, but they want to understand how do we go forward with the identity. So do I give them an entire, like every single logo idea? Do I give them an entire brand kit, or how do you think we should how would you go about presenting that?
So I think while designing, like design phase, it's not just about brand kit, but it's like the mini version of like you can create a mini version of the logo. Like if you have 5 different variation, you can just have a logo along with them similar like color palettes and a few mock-ups just to give them a visual idea. You don't have to create all the guidelines and everything for each one of them, because that's the last phase once the final design is done. But the initial phase, just to make them visualize how the brand logo will look like, or maybe how the brand will look like. For example, it's a tea. If it's a tea brand, you can have a mock-up of a tea with the logo, with the color palette as well. So that will help them understand how they should perceive the logo, how they should look at the logo. If it's a certain idea, if they have to incorporate some idea, they can easily visualize that. But if you're just randomly giving them a logo and then you're showing them like this is the font, this is something, they might not be able to visualize that. But if you're attaching some visual element to it, like how the final product might look like, how if it that might not be the final product, but it's just a visualization so that they can discuss among the team members and how they can perceive it. So that's the thing.
So it's not just like, oh, I'll just throw the whole kitchen sink at you. It's not just I just dump everything. You create too much.
It's like a mini version. Yeah.
So figuring out what works for that particular phase that you're in, and then you take that forward, right?
Yeah, that might not go into the final phase as well. You might change a lot of ideas in between between the design phase.
We should be prepared for that.
Yeah, right. We should be prepared. For example, you have presented 5 options. That 5 option might discard. You have to start from scratch.
Right.
So this is just a visual element so that they can visualize it. Not just us, but they can also visualize what we are thinking.
So it's always putting who is consuming it, putting them first, right? Always the user. In our case is the client, or for the client it could be the end user.
Yeah. Right? For us it might be very easier to just look at the logo and tell them what the idea is, but for them it might be difficult. Right. Some clients are very
experienced.
Experienced, so they might be able to tell it, but still you have to present them, even if they are very experienced in what they do. But you have to be you have to be very professional in what you do. Like if you're presenting it to a client who is not very experienced, you have to do the same thing for the client who is very experienced as well, because you have to maintain that level. Like even you don't have to
you should be consistent in your presentation.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's a good note to stop this on. But yeah, for anyone else who's listening as well, this is very important. I mean, we've been learning it the hard way sometimes. You don't have to learn it the hard way. Be prepared to present maybe more than we thought was necessary or you thought was necessary. And up the game, always up the game in presenting, and understand that first impressions matter. They are very, very important. And often they can make or break, like even for us, and we can discuss this later as well. Like when
I think, in that phase, you can go beyond what you do. Like even if it's hurting you, or even if it's not very happy, like if it's not,
it's painful.
Yeah, it's painful for you. You have to go extra mile to present yourself in a better way.
Right. And I think I was just thinking right now, maybe we can do an episode with Jeet about presenting, like the way that we present websites and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of points in website as well. I didn't cover that. I had to tell that, but I think Jeet would be the best person.
So stay tuned for more episodes, and obviously like, share, subscribe, and follow along. Varun's not going anywhere. He'll probably be hosting at some point. I'm just saying. But yeah, we've got a lot more episodes coming through, and just definitely leave a comment below. Like, how do you present? We'd love to know, because we're all learning, and I mean, we are here to be transparent, and you're free to reach out to us and ask us how we present or how we're learning. And and if you have topics that you want to learn about how it works with us, and we're learning as well, so we're happy to share. So yeah, definitely give this a thumbs up. I don't know, thumbs up. And thanks for tuning in first off. And so stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming over.